guys, it's Michelle again, back with part 2 on my tutorials and discussion over the 5 functions in the layers panel of Cricut Design Space. So if you missed part 1 over slice, check that out because some of these images that I've created that I'm going to be building off of were created with the slice function, and you can kind of see how that works. I'm going to get rid of some of these. So slicing, it kind of cut 2 layers out of each other. Welding is going to kind of join layers into one shape. So what I got started on the last one was the beginnings of a split monogram. So I have pictures pulled up here to show you what I mean by that. You can see that it's like a letter that has a little section cut out of it, which I did on the last video, but then it also has these kind of top and bottom borders within that so that you have space to put your name, and that's what we're going to work on with this. So in order to do that, I'm going to insert a shape. I'm going to go with the square to begin with, but I want to unlock the aspect ratio so that it doesn't always stay a square. It lets me manipulate. And I can make this like really skinny so it's almost a line, or I can just make it a little bit thicker just to give it a little bit more substantial top and bottom border. So I'm going to put that right underneath. And I do need to make sure that I am actually touching. These are overlapping. That was something in the Weld description that says you're going to join multiple layers. So these layers do actually need to be touching in order for it to make sense, because they need to join or conjoin together. So instead of copying and pasting, I'm going to actually just duplicate. I find that easier. It just kind of, it's one click, makes it a little bit easier. So I'm just going to make another section of that, and then I'm going to select all, align these horizontally. That way it's just kind of all in the middle. It's a little bit centered, looks nicer. I'm going to change these. I'm going to go to my sync panel, change these to the same color, so I'm using the same material as the maroon, just so you can see what I'm talking about with this next feature. So you'll notice that these sections where they overlap, it has this cut line. So this is actually going to be cutting into 4. The M is going to cut in one piece, and then these 2 lines are going to cut separately from it as well. Even if I were to select all and like group these together, it's still going to that won't solve it. Even though it lets me move them around as a whole, it's not going to really quite cut it as a whole. So if I went to my project preview, you'll see that these things are still separate. So that just makes it a little bit more difficult when you're trying to assemble your project. If you don't get these quite right, it just can look a little bit off. And so a way to make sure that these are always kind of permanently conjoined or welded, I've got to ungroup this first though. Well, no, I wanted everything selected, so we'll just select all, and I'm going to go ahead and go with the weld. And so what that did is all those inside lines here are now gone, all those overlapping are gone, and it's now merged or kind of welded into a single cut. So now if I go to my map preview, you'll see that it's kind of all, and this is one big shape. It makes it easier for the project that you don't have multiple layers on top of each other where maybe something won't quite stick or you won't quite get it aligned right. This is just a way to kind of conjoin that. And another time when that's really helpful is using script fonts. And a script font in a project that is really popular right now is using the font called MF I Love Glitter. And I'm going to make a text. I got to type in some text first. So let me put Michelle. I'm just going to start with my name. And oh, I had already had it on the MF I Love Glitter. So this is something that you may not recognize at first, but you can find this font on the website dafont.com, D-A-F-O-N-T. And then if you go here in the search box and just put I Love Glitter, it's going to take you to this one. It's called the MF I Love Glitter. So when I click on this, you may recognize it a little bit through this project. You see a lot of people making projects where it has like the wife's name connected with this heart to the husband's name, and then they're in the background is block letters of their last name, and it'll be on a sign. And this font has these special characters. If you scroll down, you'll notice that you have the option of doing this little outlined heart that will combine the two, and that's using your underscore. You've got the encased heart, and that's using this vertical line. I don't even know what that mark is called. Using your brackets will give you these long kind of tails on the front and back end of things. So let me go back to this. I'm going to edit this some more. Let me put a bracket in front of my name. Oops, not that bracket. To make that long little glyph, Michelle, and I'm going to use, let's use the underscore for the outlined, and then chocolate, because I love chocolate. Okay, so something that's right now, actually I technically could weld all of these together, but because these things aren't touching, they're not overlapping, that's not really going to help us at all. It really doesn't serve a function to weld these together. What we want it to do is actually we want it to look like a continuous flowing script font. So I'm going to lower my letter spacing so that these are touching. And it looks like they're going to be a continuous font. There we go. Perfect. Michelle and chocolate. Brilliant. Not quite that far out. But if I do zoom in a little bit, where these are connected, they're actually are individual cuts. So this is going to cut out each letter individually, and they're really not going to be connected. So you're going to have all these separate little pieces, and that in a project like this especially is going to make placement really tricky when it's really important to try to get this aligned just right. So we want to use the weld function to make that happen. So we'll just go ahead and hit weld, and you'll see some of these areas where they connect are going to now all be conjoined, and so it's just one flowing, except for maybe the ATE, and I can fix that. One thing with weld is that it's not something you can undo. You can undo it the only way you can undo it is if you're still in the same design series. Like if I'm still continuing to and edit things and I haven't saved it and closed out of it and tried to come back, I can go to undo the weld. So let me manually, this is a group, I'm gonna ungroup this so that each of these letters is kind of, I want to try to keep these three together though. Highlight all of those, and then we're going to kind of just shift those over until it is touching. There we go. And then let me highlight all of these again. Oh, no, I don't want to set a canvas. Keep it blank. Let's highlight all those again, group those, and then select that and weld. So one thing I have seen some people in these groups, they'll post a picture that maybe some of these little spots, the holes will actually fill in when you go to weld. And that tends to happen when you're zoomed out too far. Like if you notice my H's are a little bit, they're basically a filled in circle. They're not like a separate little hole like that. Which would be okay, but sometimes it's not quite what you want. So that usually happens, like I said, when, let me undo the weld. If you happen to, like if I had, get a hold of that, if I had shrunk this down and made it really small when I told it to weld, some of these, if these segments are just too close to each other, and then when I weld it, it may end up filling in like it did it on almost all of those loops on the L, and you'll notice that the E's are filled in, and it's just like even just the stems of the letters that are really thick. You don't see as much of the actual material in the background, and it's just because it was way too small. So when you are welding something like this, it's pretty important to like stretch it out, make it big first. Can't quite grab that. Make it big so you can actually see the spaces between everything, then weld, and it'll just be a lot cleaner. Yeah, and now you can shrink it to where you want it from there. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so that I think does it for the weld function. It's a pretty neat function that is fairly helpful. Oh, let me do one more thing I just thought of. You can kind of create whole new pictures or shapes with this. Like say I want to make a house. Let's just add a square and a triangle. And just stretch that out a little bit. Like this looks like a house. You know, these two are on top of each other, but really this is going to cut out two separate pieces that I have to stack on top of each other on my project. So the option, so that it actually just cuts kind of this into one giant shape, would be to weld these together so that they become one big shape. And you may not have seen that because it's this kind of darker gray color, but that line where the square and the triangle used to be is now gone away, and this is all just one, so that you could make like an arrow shape if you wanted. I could have shrunk that little square, made it a little bit skinnier to connect it to the triangle and make a little arrow, or you know, just whatever shape you want to, or picture that you want to make through that. So I think that will wrap up the weld series. Comment below with any questions that you have about anything. Maybe I can address those in future videos. Check out the link below for the first video if you didn't check that about slice. And on part 3, we'll be talking about attach. So stay tuned. See you soon.